Hello, anime enthusiasts. What if Naruto got a harem with Albedo is the title of the series. Let's begin the series now. Ah, a blonde man in his late 20s sighed with relief as he entered a tiny apartment that was exclusively his. Man, today sucked, he moaned, scattering his suitcase on the floor and then falling face first onto the bed. It was just another day in the life of a blue-collar worker who tries to make ends meet and support himself as best he can, but today wasn't his day. The busiest day of his life was today. After years of hard work and study in college, he became a carpenter and owned a small but successful carpentry workshop that focused on both Western and Japanese-style aesthetics, but mostly Japanese. Given the blonde's background, this wasn't shocking, and he was able to perfect the style after studying numerous textbooks on historical Japanese culture. This had the advantage of drawing in a variety of clients, and although he did get a good number of orders, they were typically of a level that didn't require him to put in a lot of overtime to finish. But today, well, today was crazy. His stupid but adorable secretary was booked at the same time without consulting him because of so many requests. Even though he was pleased that his little business, which employed 10 people in total, had made enough money to allow them to take a month off work due to an unexpected spike in orders, he and his coworkers still had to work constantly for over 24 hours every day. He hardly slept at all, save from the really brief power naps. I kinda wish I was back home. The blonde adult sighed as he went to the kitchen and took out a cup of ramen and some juice from the refrigerator. He then turned to face a mirror that was mounted on a wall to view his face. His peach skin had the healthiest tan because he had to work outside so much, and his face was adorned with 3 whisker marks that, despite his advanced age, made him look quite handsome. Lastly, his eyes were a clear blue color. It all seemed so long ago, he said once again, his eyes taking on a sentimental appearance. This individual is none other than Naruto Uzumaki, a former Konohagakure shinobi, a former nine-tailed fox Jinchuriki, and a hero in the 4th Shinobi War. The blonde then sadly recalled how he had died by the end of the war. He and his best friend Sasuke had fought the mother of all chakra, Kagaya Otsutsuki, and after several near misses, they were able to seal her back into her prison inside the moon. Unfortunately, before the 2 best friends could celebrate their victory, Black Zetsu, Kagaya's evil son, launched a sneak attack against Sasuke. The Uchiha was exhausted from the battle and would have probably died if Naruto hadn't taken the hit for him. Before Black Zetsu could boast about the successful kill, Naruto had mustered what little remained of his chakra and destroyed the evil spawn with a powerful Rasengan to the head. After receiving his royalties from his other sources of income, the blonde adult went to his mailbox slot and grinned. It got really weird in the end, he thought as he pulled out his notepad to record his recent financial flow. The blonde man recalled how, prior to his death, he had freed his imprisoned comrade Kurama, the 9-tailed fox, and forced Sasuke to make a vow to forgive his anger and defend his allies. The final Uchiha readily consented and held his hand when Naruto eventually died peacefully. "Asshole?" Naruto murmured, his eye twitching. "Before that dick took me away, indeed. How could he have forgotten? It seems to have occurred yesterday. After he passed away, he encountered the death god himself, who Naruto believes to be the biggest jerk. The god expressed to him how impressed it was by Naruto's life decisions and his ultimate sacrifice, and in fact, it chose to give him another chance at life, but in a different world rather than returning to his former home, which meant that he would no longer be able to visit Konoha, be the Hokage, have ninja friends, or have Sasuke or any of his other valued friends. He did experience some sadness after being reborn in a different world, but fortunately he was born into a small family with 2 sisters and very loving parents. He led a rather ordinary life, occasionally making friends, but it lacked the thrilling adventures of his former one. Well, there was that one occasion when he found Shit. He nearly forgot. Naruto hurriedly got up from the kitchen table and stuffed the remaining noodles into his mouth, saying, I got to go. Burp. Then he hurriedly checked the date on his smartphone and said, damn, it really is the last day. For those who don't know, the blonde man was not only a blue-collar worker but also an avid gamer who plays Yggdrasil, the most played Vermorp, in his spare time. The blonde walked over to the spare bedroom, which had a single, large, cozy chair with a keyboard and high-tech computer screens attached. It was one of those seats used by die-hard gamers with the newest gaming devices. He shrugged. Since this is the last day, I might as well go out with a bang, and quickly jumped into the chair. The former shinobi then put a VR headset on his head and watched as a thin hologram appeared in front of him. Activate game character model Uzumaki Naruto, he recited, and a moment later, his vision burst into a new world with thousands of colors. XXXXX. There was a lone figure of a tall man in an empty rocky area with a loud waterfall and an old forest nearby. 3 golden rings appeared and slowly descended towards the ground. The tall man was wearing thigh-length white haori that looked almost ancient and had the seal Death God engraved on the back in human blood. His lower body was covered in light metal and leather armor used by samurai, which ensured that he made almost no sound when he walked. One of the most noticeable features of the tall figure was a bushy fox tail protruding just above his rear end. Another notable feature was its head, which wasn't human at all, but rather that of an orange fox with both eyes closed and crescent scars running over them. Looking awesome as always, sigh too bad all of it would be going away after today. High-speed cast, the fox hybrid said to himself before turning to face the waterfall with a cocky expression. He closed his left hand as though holding an invisible katana and his body began to glow green with energy. Air/katana. He roared, slashing upward with his left hand, splitting the waterfall in half. Shortly afterward, tiny water droplets sprayed all over the place, briefly producing a small rainbow. Naruto smirked as he balled his hand into a fist, saying, hell yeah. Still got it. After pressing the inventory icon and navigating through the item list with his other hand, he quickly produced a crimson ring bearing the logo of a certain guild. Naruto smiled as he prepared to move to the base of his former guild, thinking, I wonder if Momonga is still around. Knowing him, he probably wants to stick around till the very end, he mused. Should surprise him that I am here as well, he said. XXXXXXXXXXXX. The Great Tomb of Nazarik's Meeting Room. XXXXXXXXXXX. This was Momonga, an undead necromancer and the head of one of the strongest guilds in Yggdrasil, wearing an elaborate jet-black academic gown with golden and violet edges. He also had a dark red orb floating under his ribs that exuded a sense of dread. To finish the look, 2 tiny, glowing red dots were menacingly radiating from the inside of his empty eye sockets. Sigh. I wish Hiro could have stayed to chat some more. A large talking skeleton said sadly to itself, feeling worn out and depressed by the solitude of his empty meeting room. Momonga gazed at the vacant seats of the other 40 guild members and moaned resignedly. He will soon have to depart as well. Ladies and gentlemen, announcing the arrival of the most badass and awesome player in all of Yggdrasil. Give it up for Naruto Uzumaki. The fox cried loudly, bowing repeatedly in all directions as a bright flash suddenly appeared in the center of the enormous room and then faded, leaving a smiling, orange-furred humanoid fox creature standing on top of the meeting room table. Even though their expressions were blank because of their weak AI, the NPC maids stationed throughout the meeting room began clapping enthusiastically when Naruto arrived. May the trash developers suffer for failing to give NPCs more complex expressions. Naruto, Momonga cried out in shock and hurried to get up from his chair. The blonde gave the talking skeleton a gentle glance and said, Hey there, Momonga. Miss me much, with a bashful smile. Although his countenance could not convey it, the undead creature was overjoyed to see his friend as the skeleton climbed on top of the conference table and quickly approached him. Mamanga said, "But didn't you say that you would not be able to make it since you had too much work?" As a bewildered emoticon face appeared next to him. "You came," he said with a broad smile. Well, since the undead's expression couldn't change, a happy face emoting appeared next to the skeleton's head to express his happiness. In response, Naruto smiled amiably and said, "It's the last day before the game shuts down. Of course I would come back for one last run. Anyway, work is done for now, so I came to say goodbye." Before jumping off the table and beginning to move around while lovingly patting the chairs around it. "Wow, I can still clearly remember the many meetings we had here," he said. "Yeah, it brings back a lot of good memories. Well, since it is our last day, might as well spend it at the seat of our power, what do you say?" Mamanga offered. However, the beast ninja realized something and remarked, "Hey, since the game is ending, mind if I look more human?" "Sure, I always liked how awesome the throne room looks like," he said. "Sure, I don't have a problem with that," the skeleton said, nodding in accord after placing his bony finger to his chin and giving it some thought. "Phew, much better. Still feels weird every time I do that. It's like I'm doing plastic surgery on my face over and over again. Although, too bad it's not a full change," Naruto moaned, prodding at his remaining fox ears. "It sucks that I can't transform these away. At least the girls in the guild loved these things," he said, his head and hair glowing slightly as it changed shape and form into the same one he had back in the real world, with a few exceptions, of course. The walking undead attempted to console his friend by saying, "Haha, it's not that bad." "Well, whatever, it's the last day anyways, so I'll let it slide," said Naruto. "I'll go to my room to check on my stuff for one final time and meet you at the throne room afterwards." Then, as he hurried through the guild halls, he passed a room that was designated as the cafeteria. It was crowded with maids standing around the dining tables and other cooking equipment, and even though he was still perplexed as to why the guild needed a cafeteria, he was able to fully appreciate the amount of detail his fellow guildmates put into their work. He stopped at the cafeteria's entrance and grinned at the NPC maids, saying, "Good work as always, ladies," knowing that they wouldn't respond. He then wondered if she was still there. He opened the menu page and quickly got Ains on the line, saying, "Hey Mamanga, since we left the management of guild protocols to you, do you know where my NPCs are?" "Alright, most of the NPCs you made are doing scouting procedures just as you have designated them to do since the last time you were here. Since it's not too far from the guild, I let them do what they're supposed to do," Mamanga said on the other end of the phone. "I see," Naruto thought. "I guess we can call them all back. Do you mind sending out the message?" "No problem, better hurry up and get down here quick. It's almost time for the server to shut down. Man, can't believe all of this is gonna go away," Naruto said, nodding to himself as he hurried into his former chamber and saw the several weapons and stuff he had accumulated throughout the game. When the guild first began making its own weapons, Naruto was less experienced than other members and didn't know how to make powerful but balanced weapons. The guild members agreed to help him on the condition that he would be the one to gather all the necessary materials, which at first was a bit of a hassle because the materials were either rare and hard to come by or they were quite common. Each of the 10 best weapons that he and his closest friends from the guild had created were made for Naruto for special reasons. Well, it was more like Naruto was pleading with them to make these weapons in exchange for favors. However, it was ultimately well worth it. Every time a weapon was created, Naruto felt a unique bond with the guildmate who assisted him. He tapped on each weapon and saw magical seals form around them. He then opened the item description tab and carefully read the information about the weapons. When he got to the last weapon, Naruto stopped and said, "The first ever item to be made with a world item by our guild. It was also the last weapon I asked to be made for me. Still haven't gotten around to naming you. as the tiny chains wound themselves around his arm. Guess that won't be happening now. He finally exited the room after making sure he hadn't missed anything. He smiled awkwardly, ready to let this game come to an end. XXXXXXXXXXXX. The Great Tomb of Nazarik's Throne Room. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto said, "Ah, the best icy wine available in the game." And then he sipped from the bottle. "Ah, refreshing," he added appreciatively, looking at Mamanga, who was standing next to him. "Not drinking?" he asked. Mamanga politely declined, saying, "No thanks. I figured I'd rather avoid bad status effects from the game alcohol, especially since the game will end soon. Besides, I'm an undead, remember? If this were real, the liquid would go through my bony neck. Also, you do know that it is impossible to get drunk in this game, right? We can't even taste anything. The way you keep pretending that these drinks are real sometimes make me wonder if you get drunk before you log into the game," Mamanga said, but he sighed in frustration when he heard Naruto fake burp aloud. "This blonde bastard sure knows how to irritate people when he wants to," Mamanga asked. "So, how are things at work?" "I got 20 different requests at the same time." Naruto sighed as he continued to drink. "Don't get me wrong, the business is great, it's just that my cute secretary had to book all of them at once, and you know what the worst part of is? She did it again. We already barely made it in time to complete the orders. And now we will have to do it again after vacation. The guys are going to skewer me." "Ouch," Naruto remarked. "You have no idea, dude," before checking the clock to see how much time was left. "Man, it's a shame that I was the only one who showed up for the end. Touch me, Tabula, and the others could have at least sent farewell messages," he said. Mamanga reasoned, "I know, but the others had to leave due to personal reasons, even though he was devastated that he would not be able to see his pals one final time." After getting up, Naruto said, "Well, at least you got me." He held out his bottle and said, "Sit on the guild's throne and let's take one last picture. Let's share one last moment of awesomeness." Mamanga nodded. "I can do that," and the undead king sat on the guild throne in the most spectacular manner before bringing up the game menu and putting it in camera mode. Naruto commanded, "Stand by," as Pleiades, the NPC combat maid, and Seabass, the NPC butler, moved to the sides of the throne room. All those raids and battles, and instead of going out with a bang, we go out with a womp womp, the fox hybrid remarked, sitting on the floor beside Mamanga. "But if there's ever going to be Yggdrasil 2 or something like that, be sure to hit me up and I'll join your next team," he added. "I'll definitely do that," Mamanga responded, preparing the camera. "Okay, Naruto, smile," she said. Naruto did just that, making a peace sign and grinning broadly while closing one eye. "Click, perfect picture," laughed Naruto. "Like always." Momoga nodded, then turned to see Albedo standing close to the throne. He recalled how Tabula had said she was one of the best NPCs he had made, so he decided to read her biography. When he finally finished it, he was disappointed by his guildmate's poor sense of humor. He had invested so much time and effort into her, only to turn her into a bitch. He decided to change the description a little because the game was coming to a conclusion, and he used Ain's old gown staff to get administrator access to her programming. By the time he was done, it was almost midnight. "I guess this is the end," Naruto said, raising his head and turning to face his boss. "You can log out if you want. I'll stay here until the last second," Mamanga said. Naruto grinned at the zombie and firmly stated, "No way, we are both gonna see through end together, and not just as guildmates, but as best friends as well. It felt good to have someone you can truly name your best friend," Mamanga said gently in response. "Well, all right then, Naruto, thank you," she said. After that, they both closed their eyes and bided their time. 23 hours 59 minutes and 57 seconds. 23 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. 23 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. Midnight. XXXXXXXX. And 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. Naruto yawned as he moved his hands to take off the gaming headset on his head. It's strange because he didn't remember wearing a hat when he logged in. The hat felt like it was made of fur, which is soft and pointy. He decided to remove the mystery hat by pulling hard at the pointy ends of it. He barely controlled his screams as he struggled to keep his scalp from being torn off. When he opened his eyes quickly and jumped up in alarm, he saw the same throne room instead of his usual gaming room. He then turned to look at the side and noticed that his fellow guild member was not reacting at all, forgetting that his friend was a skeleton and could not show them. "The hell?" he exclaimed and attempted to open the game menu, but it wasn't there. Naruto told himself, "Okay, don't panic, don't panic. I'm sure it's some sort of glitch that occurred when they shut down the servers." However, as time went on, his anxiety and fear increased. "Okay, what in the hell is actually going on?" he asked himself. Naruto shook his companion and said, "Oi, Mamanga, wake up, snap out of it." "It's really strange to watch a gigantic skeleton act like way," Mamanga moaned. What is it, Naruto? Can't you see that I'm thinking about work tomorrow?" As he continued to shake the enormous skeleton, Naruto yelled, "Seriously, dude, snap out of it. We have a big problem." "Ha!" Mamanga's crimson, beady eyes blazed briefly as he finally began to pay attention. "Naruto? What's wrong?" he asked. He looked around and saw that the status or control screens he was accustomed to viewing in his normal point of view were no longer present. "Hey, the deadline for the servers is today at midnight, right?" he questioned. "Yeah, why?" Mamanga said, her voice remarkably deep and regal. Before realizing the change in speech, Naruto said, "Look at yourself. What do you see? And why is your voice so manly now?" The undead monarch was about to respond angrily when a dim green light suddenly engulfed him. "What's that dash?" Knowing the normally ineffective spell, Naruto muttered to himself, "What, the dash? Was that a calming spell?" With much more composure, Mamanga said, "I'm sorry, what did you want to say?" "Look at your field of vision, what do you see?" jolted Naruto out of his reverie upon hearing his friend's question. There was nothing in his field of vision save what was in front of him. So Mamanga looked forward and gazed off into space. What could be wrong with that? Hold for a minute, is there nothing in his area of vision? Nothing in his visionary field? Mamanga realized, no status, no controls, no nothing. With a furious glance around, Naruto exclaimed, "Exactly. What the hell is going on, Mamanga? What's wrong, my lords?" The two tensed up amusingly when they heard a feminine voice. They could count the number of female players in the guild with both hands, making it easy to recall which voice belonged to which female. Moreover, this sound came from a stranger. The female NPC was the only person visible when they slowly swiveled to the side. This NPC was named Albedo, and if someone had to describe her in one word, they would undoubtedly say that she was perfect. She had jet black long hair that reached her waist, golden eyes with slits in them, and a goddess face. Her pure white dress accentuated her hourglass figure, and the two horns that protruded from her head did not detract from her beauty. The dark crow wings behind her back further enhanced her appearance, and it goes without saying that she was a sight to make even the most awed men drool. "My lords?" she said, peering directly at them. But Naruto felt as though she was staring at Mamanga with a far more intense intensity, and he also noticed that the other NPCs were watching at them. "Gah! Albedo, could you explain what has happened?" Naruto asked, looking back to see the green glow of a spell soothing his skeletal buddy once more. Oddly, the NPCs seemed to be oblivious to it. I am sorry, Lord Naruto, but I really don't know what you mean by that, the woman said, looking down in embarrassment. No way. Are the NPCs conversing? Are they still alive? That doesn't make sense, Naruto thought. The NPC can only perform the simple actions created by the shady developers due to their inadequate AI. Technically, they are more capable, but making them do something more adaptable would require years and years of meticulous programming. Besides, everyone is aware that specially created NPCs cannot speak. Seabass, Mamanga began in a quiet but forceful tone. Please step out of the tomb and confirm the surroundings of Nazarick, Pleiades maids. Please guard the 9th floor. If there are any intruders, deal with them. Seabass nodded. Understood, Lord Mamanga. Yuri Alpha interjected. It will be done. Before Seabass and the women departed to fulfill their directives. Mamanga said to himself, it's strange that they're recognizing orders that aren't specific to Yggdrasil. That is weird. On a side note, all of our 5 senses are working here as well, Naruto said as he raised his chin. Wonder what else has changed. I need step out and do some testing. Try to do some experimenting on your end as well. Sure, was Naruto's first response before his follower could concur. What comes next? Before the skeleton's gaze fell upon Albedo's abundant chest, he thought, well, Naruto did advise doing some experiments, right? Albedo? Could you come over here for a bit? XXXXXXXXXXXX. The Great Tomb's 6th floor. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto exclaimed, whoa, Blue Planet did an incredible job with the sky effects as he gazed at the stunning night sky of the 6th floor. Blue Planet was such a nature lover that he created a fake day and night cycle throughout the entire floor, including gorgeous forests, deserts, jungles, lakes, and more. Naruto then turned to face the enormous structure that resembled a coliseum in the desert-like area. Players engaged in combat in the amphitheater where golems were positioned to observe from a VIP room while their guildmates took in the action. As he got closer to the arena, Naruto thought, I wonder if they're also there. He took a deep breath and exclaimed, Aura, Mare, are you two here? When he yelled loudly, a big reptile landed in front of him, and 2 kids were seated on its back. She had golden hair and heterochromia eyes, with the left eye being blue and the right green. She wore a reddish-black dragon-scale leather bodysuit which was covered by a white and gold vest embroidered with the sigil of the Ainzel gown. Below it, she wore a matching pair of white pants and gold-plated shoes. She also had a whip around her waist and a huge decorated bow on her back. One of the children was a tomboyish-looking child with dark skin and pointed ears, which are characteristics of the Dark Elves. The other young child had dark skin, pointed ears, and heterochromia eyes, though his right eye was blue and his left was green. He was dressed in a full bodysuit made of blue dragon-scale leather, covered by a vest made of white and gold that was embroidered with the Ainzel gown's sigil and a forest green leaf cloak. Below, he wore a short white skirt that exposed his thighs, and he had an acorn necklace around his neck that gave off a faint silver light. His thin hands were covered with glossy white silk gloves, and he was holding a twisted black wooden staff. Bukubuku Chagama created the twin guardians of the 6th floor, Ora Bellafiora and Mare Bellofiori, who were the 2 offspring. Greetings, Lord Naruto. They greeted their master with childlike delight and duty. Naruto instinctively patted their heads until he realized they were likely older than he was, and he was also afraid it might have offended them. Most of his guild friends enjoyed creating strange contradictions on their characters. For instance, Bukubuka Chagama created the Dark Elf twins, who were both crossdressers. Has anything felt strange or different? Naruto approached them and inquired, have you two been behaving? Ora questioned bewilderedly. Huh? What is my lord talking about? Everything is still the same, she said. The twins exchanged glances and shook their heads in perfect unison as Naruto repeated, "Really? Nothing feels different whatsoever." The fox hybrid could only cup his chin in mild amazement, suggesting that the NPCs haven't noticed any changes. "Well, whatever, do you guys want to help me with some training exercises? I need to test out a few things," Naruto said. Mare questioned, Like what, Lord Naruto?" Naruto responded, "Well, I just need to work out for a bit, been out of the game for a long time so to speak," carefully selecting his words in case they were triggered. Aura obediently nodded as she gestured toward the Colosseum. After saying, "Sure, we were heading there anyway," she bowed to Naruto. "Of course, you lead the way, my lord," she said, before snatching her brother's head and making him kneel as well because all he was doing was standing there and gazing. Naruto didn't mind that the Dark Elf twins were following him closely as he made his way to the amphitheater. In fact, it seemed as though Aura was forcing Mare to follow him, but once they were inside, Naruto took in the sights. The amphitheater was a large arena surrounded by multiple layers of auditorium, and it was 40 meters high with a length of 180 meters on its long axis, a width of 150 meters on its short axis, and an oval complex that was 40 meters high. It was modeled after the Colosseum of the Roman Empire, and the audience would have been made up of countless golems acting as spectators, but it was currently empty. The sky in the Colosseum changed depending on the time of day, even displaying an actual sun with the appropriate daylight effects. Naruto wasn't sure whose idea it was, but it came to pass primarily because someone once made a casual joke about a well-known location in Rome. There was also the VIP Lounge, a 6-story complex where members of Ain Zulgaon would sit and watch the invaders of Nazarick battle for their lives at their leisure. "Yep, same as before," Naruto said, surveying the landscape and glancing up at the artificial sky. "Blue Planet Sand's sky is intact too," he said, recalling how much his guildmate loved the natural world. However, who could blame him? The level of pollution in the real world was nearly intolerable. The real world where he was reborn was extremely polluted, and the corrupted government made matters worse. Almost all government decisions were made by powerful corporations who supported them rather than politicians, and Naruto believed that these corporations knew the planet was in serious trouble but chose to ignore it and exploit the planet and its people to the hilt before it was all destroyed. However, that didn't stop Naruto from trying to improve his life, which is the main reason he had a small but skilled team of builders with the best hazmat suits money could buy. They were able to work outside for long hours in a polluted world without worrying about suffocating when they entered a dangerous area. Something that other companies that purchased mass-produced equipment that was prone to failure even on first use couldn't say the same about. Although purchasing the best equipment was expensive and required Naruto to spend all of his life savings, it paid off handsomely. Equipped with cutting-edge hazmat suits and recycling and processing machines, Naruto and his team ventured into various dangerous areas to collect and recycle materials that could be used for construction and craftsmanship. However, they still had to exercise extreme caution because, in the best-case scenario, a single scratch or tear in the suit could leave a person bedridden for days. It seemed as though his team had won a significant battle in an ongoing conflict when they successfully finished their first order, and the win was accompanied with wonderful benefits. Even though the money received wasn't that much, the fame that followed was undoubtedly greater. The first customer told others about a small business of artisans who dared to go into hazardous areas to gather materials and produce high-quality items, and word quickly spread, resulting in a steady flow of orders for the company. Naruto and his colleagues were able to buy nice apartments with all the money they made, and they still had money left over to truly indulge themselves. Naturally, Naruto used the extra pocket money for the gaming set and Yggdrasil. Naruto frequently felt depressed at work because of how much nature was destroyed. It always struck him even more when he remembered how beautiful elemental nations were and the connection he once had with nature as a sage. Style never allowed himself or his co-workers to take it easy during the job. Despite all of the success, it could be easily taken away by a simple mistake made while working in a highly polluted environment. Since Naruto used to view the blue sky frequently in his previous life and now felt guilty for taking it for granted, it goes without saying that he can somewhat relate to Blue Planet's preoccupation with seeing it. Mamanga emerged from a flickering portal before the fox hybrid could finish thinking. "Oh, Mamanga," he said, "did you find out anything? Why do I get this strong feeling that you are ashamed of something?" Before the calming spell took effect and he became stoic once more, the skeleton exclaimed, "Crap. You can sense it." I'll tell you in a moment. I see that Aura and Mare are here with you," he said. As her brother attempted to hide behind Naruto, the Tom girl bowed and said, "Yes, Lord Mamanga. Mare, pay your respect to Lord Mamanga. It's quite all right. In fact, I want to do a little experiment. Aura, Mare, mind fighting something of mine while I talk to Naruto?" The deceased asked. "Of course," said Aura instantaneously, beaming broadly. He pulled out the staff of Angel Gown and aimed it at the open space. "Summon. Primal Fire Elemental," he cried, causing a red gem on the staff to shine. A tower of fire burst from below, quickly taking the shape and form of the elemental in question. Naruto casually remarked, I thought they would look bigger than that," as Mamanga approached him. "So, why the shame?" As he recalled how he assisted Tabula in creating Albedo by locating some of the rare materials he needed to create her, Naruto laughed and recalled peeking at her settings during the creation process. Well, I do remember that she had a setting added to make her a bitch, so it shouldn't be too much out of character for her, right?" he asked. "Actually, before the game was shut down, I might have accidentally, on a small miscalculation, have done something to Albedo that changed her views on me." "Well, I can't really blame you. The game was shutting down, so messing with some settings isn't that big of a deal. So, what did you change?" Naruto asked, grinning, but it was obvious that the black aura behind it was concealing a nefarious intent. Mamanga shifted uneasily, saying, "Well, Naruto responded, "Look, if it makes you feel any better, I promise not to get mad too much." And then he searched his inventory for something. As the blonde pulled out what appeared to be a handmade baseball bat and leaned it against the wall, Mamanga backed off somewhat in dread. "So I will now ask again, what did you change?" Mamanga said, "I, might have set Albedo to be completely in love with me." Wham! He threw the broken part behind his back, bonking the fire elemental on the head and temporarily confusing it. It broke. Naruto saw as he slammed the baseball-like object against the skeleton's head with all of his strength, but nothing happened as Mamanga just stood there, trembling cowardly with pieces of the broken object all around him. "Damn passive skills," he said. As the passive soothing spell worked feverishly to control his emotions, the skeleton stammered, "I'm sorry, Naruto dash." The fox ninja said, "What's done is done. Just promise me that you will not fret over what you did too much. We both know how often you like to overthink and blow things out of proportion." Because he was aware of how the poor overlord would sometimes place too much blame on himself if he thought he had offended or hurt his friends in any way, even when he wasn't at fault. Despite being exhausted, Aura and Mare hurried enthusiastically towards the two lords and exclaimed, "Lord Mamanga, Lord Naruto, did you see that?" Mamanga nodded, Yes. "Yes, I did. Good work, you two," and said, "Here," taking out 2 glass cups and a glass pitcher from a pocket dimension. He handed them each one and filled them with water, which they happily drank. Naruto handed them 2 bags of the rare Hassan's Chocolate Valentine, which he had won during the one-time collaboration event with FGU. "Also, here, take these. They may be rare, but you guys deserve it," he said. Be sure to enjoy them, he said. Aura's eyes glistened as she gasped, Awea, they look so yummy. When Mare opened the package and saw all the miniature chocolates he could choose from, his eyes also lit up. Thank you, Lord Naruto and Lord Mamanga, he said. Aura said, You know, I thought you would be more scary, Lord Mamanga, before turning to face Naruto. And I thought you were gone forever, Lord Naruto, just like the others, the young elf muttered without saying. She was happy that another supreme being, in addition to their great ruler, had chosen to remain with them. Oh, Mamanga said in a playful manner. I could be more scary if you like, the overlord said, making every effort to seem as malevolent as he could, and the female elf shook her head rapidly. Mare gave Naruto a sheepish glance as she swiftly objected, No way. I like the way you are right now way better. Something wrong? He inquired, smiling kindly as he approached the youngster. And not at all. I'm just happy to see you again, my lord. It's been so long since we saw any of the other supreme beings here. The cross-dressing male said, shaking his head. He stopped when he felt Naruto's hand gently pat him on the head, reassuring him with such a simple gesture that Mare could only smile shyly at him, as the boy was thrilled to have the kindest supreme being by their side once more. Another portal opened, revealing a female floor guardian. She was a short-stripped vampire with the appearance of a 14-year-old girl. She was described as a true beauty with pale, shiny skin, seductive crimson-red eyes, and fine facial features. Her silver hair was tied in a ponytail with a large ribbon on top, allowing others to see her face in full. Oh yeah? I'm the first one here, she said in a boastful yet elegant voice. Naruto immediately recognized her and said, Well, if it ain't Shaltir, my, not only do I get to see the personification of beauty that is Mamanga, but also the personification of my desires, Lord Naruto, she exclaimed, her face beaming with delight at the sight of another supreme being who stayed with them in addition to Mamanga. Her cheeks were a little flushed. When Aura saw the vampire clinging on Naruto like a tramp, she sighed in frustration, asking, Shaltir, why don't you give it a rest? Wait, was she also sniffing him? Oh, what's this? I didn't expect a child to be here. Truly, Mare. How can you stand being saddled with such a burden of an older sister? Shaltir smirked at the young elf after muttering, Che. Aura retorted angrily, like you're one to talk when it comes to your fake boobs. Oh, it's on now. Shaltir pointed, blushing again, but this time in humiliation. How dare you? My breasts are amazing. Unlike your flat chest, true, but I'm only 76 years old. I still have room to grow. Unlike your undead body which can't grow anymore. Aura sighed. I bet the reason you took so long to get here was because you were busy putting more stuffing into that fake chest of yours. Shaltir said, Why you little dash, and the two of them began arguing in a humorous manner. Naruto sighed as his skeleton companion nodded in agreement, saying, just like Perorancino-san and Bakubuka Chagama-san, always arguing. With his arms crossed, the overlord remarked, It's a little frightening how dead-on it is. What a ruckus. A loud, gruff voice complained, causing everyone to turn and see a huge creature that was 2.5 meters tall, resembling a cross between an ant and a mantis with a tail twice as long as his height and covered in sharp spikes like icicles. His powerful jaw appeared capable of breaking bones with a single bite, and he had a silver halberd in two of his hands, a mace that emitted black light, and a crooked sheath that appeared to be for a broadsword. Finally, his shoulders and back appeared to be lifted icebergs, and every time he exhaled deeply, it appeared as though he was exhaling cold, icy air. This was Cocytus, guardian of the fifth floor, and the creation of warrior Takamikazuchi. Naruto said, Cocytus, good to see you. Recalling that the insect was one of the few non-player characters he would bring along for challenging material farming tasks. and in situations where he needed a strong character to support him in the absence of his guildmates. Lord Naruto, said Cocytus, I had assumed you wouldn't come back. Yeah. I've been hearing that a lot lately, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. You came, Cocytus, Momonga said with a nod of agreement. Cocytus bowed to them and said, I always answer the summons of my lords. Everyone, I apologize for the wait, said another voice, and they all turned to see its owner, Demiurge, guardian of the 7th floor, who was made by Albert Alan Odell. He was a demon with dark skin and neatly combed black hair. He wore round glasses, and behind them were eyes that were so squinted that they weren't normally visible. His eyes lacked eyeballs. In fact, they were replaced by shining jewels with numerous tiny cuts. He was dressed like a gentleman, wearing a British suit and tie, and had a silver tail behind his back that was covered in metal plates, with 6 long spikes at the end. Oh, this is a surprise. I didn't expect Lord Naruto to return, he said. In exchange, the demon man bowed politely and folded one arm across his chest. Hey, Naruto said nonchalantly, I guess most of the Guardians are here? Albedo clarified, yes, Gargantua is still deactivated and the victim cannot attend. Now everyone. To our supreme leaders, the ritual of fidelity, she declared forcefully as every floor guardian in attendance fell on one knee and covered their hearts. The guardian of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floors, shall tear blood fallen, I bow before the supreme ones. As icy steam poured from his jaws, he uttered, I bow before the supreme ones, Cocytus, the guardian of the 5th floor. Her brother added, also the guardian of the 6th floor, Mare Bellofiore, after she had spoken, the guardian of the 6th floor, Ora Bellafiora. They both concluded in unison, we bow before the supreme ones. The guardian of the 7th floor, Demiurge, I bow before the supreme ones. And I, Albedo, overseer of the guardians of the great tomb of Nazarick, bow before the supreme ones, she began. Other than the guardian of the 4th floor, Gargantua, and guardian of the 8th floor, Victim, all of the guardians have come here before you. We offer our complete loyalty to you. Momonga gave the command, thank you all for coming, raise your heads while exhaling a black aura. It would be better to act normally like they did in the game, but Naruto always puzzled why his friend enjoyed pretending to be an evil tyrant. He would prefer not battle all of these incredibly strong NPCs without his best gear available. Now then, onto the topic at hand. For some reason, the Great Tomb of Nazarick has been caught up in an unknown situation. Seabass, can you tell us what you saw outside the tomb? Of course, as per Supreme Ruler's orders, I scouted outside of the Great Tomb and have discovered that we all have been transported from our great swamps to a foreign grassland with flat fields as long as several kilometers around us, Seabass said. Recalling the fundamentals of surviving in a foreign land that he had learned from his professors in his previous life, Naruto questioned, No sign of humans, monsters, or any settlements within range whatsoever. Not within the immediate range, but after using a few low farsight spells I was able to spot signs of civilization. Fortunately, they are far enough away that we won't draw attention, Seabass said. Momonga questioned the young elf, I see, Mare. Is there a way that we can blend Nazarick within our surroundings? I could use my magic to create false hills around us and place us within a hill. Mare replied. Albedo snarled, appearing ready to leap on her victim at any moment. You would dare spread dirt over the glorious walls of Nazarick? Albedo. Momonga said, there's no need to say anything superfluous. She immediately repented, saying, Forgive me, my lord, I was careless. Momonga and Naruto were both in awe of how quickly she was able to change her attitude. Mare, can it be done? Asked Momonga. Mare nodded and then seemed a little uncertain about her offer. Yes, although. Seabass, are there any hills in the area? Momonga asked, offering a nod of comprehension before turning to face the butler. I understand having one large hill would stand out too much, she said. None, my lord, the area is barren. We are completely isolated, replied Seabass. The skeleton whispered. I see. The undead skeleton man nodded in agreement as Naruto explained his reasoning. Then just make more, he suggested. I often see landscapes that do have one or more hills in them. While I admit it isn't the best way of hiding from prying eyes, but until we can come up with a better solution, it will do a better job than doing nothing at all. We can also use some illusion magic as well to make the scenery appear more natural, he said. Mamanga turned to face the two guardians and said, given our current circumstances, those are valid ideas. Demiurge, Albedo, I have a task for you both. Yes, my lord, they both bowed simultaneously. I want you two to work with the other floor guardians and our intelligence department to build a stronger information gathering network as quickly as possible and to fortify our defenses. Demiurge said, as you command, bowing farther. He turned to the true vampire and said, first, Shaltir, before saying, finally, before you leave to your assigned duties, I would like to ask each of you, what kind of being am I to you all? Shaltir responded, blushing, crystallizations of beauty, the most beautiful creature in the world. Cositus. The warrior replied with pride, a king worthy of being the absolute ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick, stronger than all of the guardians. Aura. The female dark elf said enthusiastically, merciful, as well as someone who excels in foresight. Mare. The male dark elf bowed and replied, caring and compassionate to those who stand beside them. Demiurge, a being who makes wise decisions and acts upon them efficiently, someone that not even God could hold a candle to, the very personification of the word inscrutable. The devil said with authority, Seabass. The butler responded with a respectful bow, the head of all the supreme beings and a merciful leader who stayed behind until the end. And lastly, Albedo. Albedo responded passionately, blushing profusely at the last line. The ones who rule over all of us, the ones who stayed behind and continued to be the most supreme being, and the man who I'm in love with. When the blonde hybrid raised his hands in fright, Mamanga stammered, I see. Ahem, and what of Lord Naruto? Whoa, don't push me into the spotlight like that. Lord Naruto is the embodiment of every woman's desires and someone I love with all of my being, Shaltir added, impatient to be the first to speak out again, much like Albedo did with Mamanga. I see him as a great warrior and a loyal and kind master to us all. Aura said, glaring at the vampire's flatboard. As the ice-clad insect spoke politely to the ninja, a being who can handle any ambush and trickery from even the strongest opponents, someone who can never back down. Mare grinned slightly as he remarked, a paragon of virtue to us servants who were deemed worthy of serving him. A being of the most unpredictable nature and someone who possesses the same great intelligence as our supreme ruler does, Demiurge said next, beaming enthusiastically at the man. Seabass said last with a faint smile and a little more passion in his voice, a merciful and fair supreme being who is not afraid to enforce justice. Before he and Naruto teleported away to a hallway that led to the throne room, Mamanga said, Harem, I have heard all of your thoughts and accept them, continue working faithfully in our names. He then began pacing the hall. Mamanga exclaimed, what is with their glorious views of me? Just before the soothing spell took over. After hearing the floor Garadian's description of him, Naruto couldn't help but chuckle enthusiastically, completely missing Mamanga's cry of desperation. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Returning to the Colosseum. XXXXXXXXXXX. The surviving floor guardians began talking among themselves after the supreme beings left, talking about plans for the future and how to best satisfy their laws. However, they soon heard a powerful, sophisticated, and elegant voice say, seems I missed the Lord's speech. The tomb's overseer scowled before saying, oh lady dash, to the newcomer. The woman raised her hand and said, stop, which made Albedo frown even more. The others turned to look at her, and several of them grinned broadly at her. I only came here to check if Naruto has indeed returned, she said. Such insolence. I strongly suggest that you address them as lords. Do not forget your station. Albedo's scowl developed into a fierce glare that was echoed by a few of the other guardians. It seems that you are the one who forgot that I have the same level of authority as you do. Albedo, I was created to view all supreme beings as equals, with not one of them standing above the other. The woman said calmly rather than angrily, and Demiurge nodded sincerely in agreement. Yes, that is why Lord Naruto created you, to ensure that his and other supreme beings' goals are upheld in his absence. The demon replied with a broad grin. I do admit your status does irk me at times, but your work ethic and dedication to your duties for the sake of our masters is truly awe-inspiring. After the supreme beings had departed, the woman hummed, humph, and then she turned to ask, what is wrong with Shaltir Blood Fallen, to the lone person in the group who was still bowing. Pardon me. It seems that my underwear had been dampened after being in Lord Naruto's presence after such a long time, she remarked with a slight blush. You filthy bitch, exclaimed Albedo, before a grin appeared on her face. Shaltir yelled, bitch! Sorry, Albedo, but to me, if any woman doesn't get wet from that, she must be starving. Like you're one to talk, you lamprey. Albedo raised her arms in an arrogant expression. Keep flapping those fangs, see where it gets you. You will be never good enough for Lord Naruto. He deserves a woman of a higher caliber. Just like how I am to Lord Mamanga. Demiurge remarked, I think we'll leave the women to you, Aura, just as the male guardians began to emerge. Aura became agitated and pointed to the new arrival, saying, wait, Demiurge. You're leaving me with them. She's the one who dash. The woman raised her head in a noble fashion and said, I only keep the order. I don't settle childish disputes over childish reasons. I'll go back to my other duties. Demiurge waved off, saying, if it gets bloody, I'll intervene, before approaching the woman and engaging her in conversation. I still have no clue as to why women fight like that, said Cocytus. Seriously, is this really something worth fighting over? Aura yelled Cocytus. You are not helping. Personally, their vitriol aside, I'm interested in seeing the results of their dispute for myself, said Demiurge. Mare asked, huh? What do you mean? Think about it, the supreme beings should have heirs, no? Lord Mamanga has stayed with us until the end and Lord Naruto was away for a long time. I remembered the other supreme ones talking how he had duties of high importance to attend to and rarely visited. After he returned, I figured that he was done with them. But what if Lord Naruto and even Lord Mamanga leave this place just like the other supreme beings did? It would be nice if they would leave behind descendants we could pledge our fidelity to. Mare questioned, you mean one of them could be a wife of one of the supreme beings? While Aura's face flushed 55 shades in a split second at the prospect of becoming a wife herself. Unable to comprehend the devil's remarks, Cocytus yelled, what kind of blasphemy are you spouting? Think about it, wouldn't it be nice to pledge our loyalty to Lord Mamanga's and Lord Naruto's descendants too? Asked Demiurge. As he was now in his own world, Cocytus asked, clearly bewildered, pledge ourselves to their descendants? Then it dawned on him, that would actually be nice. No, it's wonderful. What a wonderful situation. Aw, and I'll be called Uncle Cocytus. And they would be riding on my shoulders sometimes. And I would have the honor of teaching the children of the ones who I respect the most. He raised his arms high, picturing the children of Mamanga and Naruto cheering him on as he raised them up. Demiurge looked at the male elf's attire and said, by the way, Mare, why are you dressed as a girl? Oh, Lady Bakubka Chagama told me to wear it, saying something about me being in Otoko no Ko or something like that, Mare clarified. Then perhaps all boys in Nazarick should be dressed like that. This is worth looking into, Demiurge thought. Now then, Cocytus, come back to reality, please. Cocytus answered hesitantly. Really? What a wonderful thing. Yes, indeed. Good for you, Demiurge said. Are you two done fighting, Shaltir and Alberto? Aura sighed. Seems like it, but now they're just arguing. as the vampire and the succubus were worn out from snarling and growling like rabid dogs. She could now understand why it was normal to be the wife of the most powerful beings, as she had learned from reading in the Great Library. But she did wonder why the library had a section dedicated to the supreme beings called Secret H Collection, members only. Maybe there was forbidden knowledge there. She heard the female vampire say before she had a chance to think about it further. We decided to finish this another time, Shaltir gasped. We'll call it a draw for the time being, Albedo said, panting as well. I guess the argument is settled for the moment. Now, don't you have orders to give, Albedo? Asked Demiurge. Yes, of course, Albedo confirmed with a nod after straightening her messy outfit. XXXXXXXXXXXX. The armory room. XXXXXXXXXXX. After 3 days of nearly non-stop work in Nazarick, Momonga and Naruto took some time to adjust to their new bodies and abilities based on their race. Based on what Momonga had learned about himself, he should be able to wield a sword because he is level 100, but he isn't able to do so outside of his class. In addition, he doesn't feel afraid or uneasy about his new form. Perhaps he has grown both mentally and physically. As the skeleton attempted to swing a sword, Naruto hummed, before the weapon abruptly phased out of his grasp. So, it looks like I can't be a caster unless the class allows it, and you can't be a warrior as well, Naruto said. Momonga spotted in dismay, yes. Naruto trailed off, cupping his chin at the idea of them being heralded as either gods or demons. Well, that limits me as well, even though most of my equipment is rare gacha items that can be equipment due to stats and not classes. These items do give me a bigger variety of attacks, but they are not on the same power level that other classes are specialized in. I've also been thinking, what if this new world doesn't have magic? If they see you or me, it would prove difficult, Momonga concurred. After a little while, he had the epiphany, create greater item. A white light flashed across him, and when it dissipated, the undead showed up completely clad in jet black body armor with purple and golden markings. He also wore a red cape in observance of Touch Me. Naruto remarked, "Wow, looking pretty nice," staring at the new black jet armor that resembled Touch Me's. I can tell that this armor is only a relic class item, but since it was created from your magic and is of a much lower grade, you are able to wear it without suffering class penalties, he said. Your deduction is correct. If I create a lower grade item out of magic like this armor, I can use it without class restriction. Momonga said after taking the sword once more and managing to grasp it firmly this time without it slipping out of his fingers. He then performed a test swing, briefly producing a slight gust of wind. As the metal-clad skeleton gazed at him, Naruto said, "That sounds awesome, but do keep in mind that this pure magic armor doesn't get chipped or warped by damage. We gotta make some actual equipment in case we need to look like real mortals and not overpower players. You are adapting to this new world situation rather well. I'm surprised," Momonga said, unsure of how Naruto would handle the abrupt turn of events. He could attribute it to his newfound callousness as an undead, but technically Naruto is still a heteromorphic being with life, so his emotional flow should be relatively normal compared to himself. However, based on what he heard the other guild members say about him, it seemed that Naruto's life was quite hectic because his real-life job was extremely dangerous. It wouldn't be too unusual if the blonde developed strong mental fortitude as a result. "Let's just say I get used to strange thing pretty easy," Naruto joked. "Anyways, want to actually step out of the tomb and see what the new world is actually like?" Wearing his creation, the undead said, "That does sound pretty interesting. Very well then, I shall take up on that offer," before departing the room. The two of them teleported to the first floor using their rings of Angel Gown, which were unique rings that made it easy for them to move between the floors of their guild. As they were leaving, 3 of the evil lords who watched over the 7th floor unexpectedly appeared. The first was jealousy. a creature with a crow's head and a feminine appearance who was wearing a form-fitting bondage costume. The second was Avarice, who had 2 black bat wings and 2 horns sticking out of his temples. He was dressed in full plate armor that was open at the chest, showing off his abdominal muscles. Although he may have appeared to be a handsome young man to others, a close examination of his eyes would reveal an unbounded cold desire. The final one was Wrath, who resembled a terrifying demon with scales covering his body, fiery wings, a snake-like tail, and strong limbs and sharp claws. He also had fangs sticking out of his mouth. As Naruto assumed a battle stance, he said, "Whoa, I thought those were on our side," but Momonga stopped him when he noticed Demiurge among them. "And that armor?" asked the 7th floor guardian. "My lords, why are you two here? How did he recognize me?" Rez, there's a special reason for it," the undead replied quickly, despite the fact that the two of them were just eager to get some fresh air. "No, wait," Mammon thought. "The only person who could teleport within Nazarick would have a guild ring, of course he would know." "I see you wish to inspect Mare's work yourselves without drawing attention. Very clever, my lords," said Demiurge. Mammon mumbled inaudibly, "He's completely mistaken," Naruto pondered. How did this fiend think of such an explanation? In agreement with the hoax, the undead said, yes. Yes, indeed." Naruto mentally face-palmed at the absurdity of the circumstance, saying, "And he is using this as an excuse. Well, as long as Demiurge believes it, I guess it's okay. Allow me to accompany you, my lords, just in case. One must not be unguarded when treading into an unknown territory," said Demiurge. "Very well," Momonga said after giving it some thought. Naruto muttered, "You sure? I mean, we can take care of ourselves, you know? If it's just him alone, I see no harm in that," Momonga said. Demiurge said, "Thank you for granting me such a selfish request." And then he got up, and the 3 of them left the tomb. They soon came upon the great tomb of Nazarick's entrance after some walking, and beyond it they noticed a faint glow. As they passed through the entrance, they were met with the sight of a stunning night sky full of numerous bright stars from the cosmos. There were hardly any clouds or severe weather to be seen, just a gentle breeze and the tiny lights dancing in the sky. As a faint, nearly undetectable yellow glow briefly enveloped his body, Naruto's eyes widened in amazement. "Even in my wildest dreams I could never image a more beautiful sky than this," he said, as tiny, translucent, faintly glowing yellow clouds appeared around his ankles. A moment later, he was slowly raised off the ground and flew towards the sky. "This is amazing. This is the most stars I've ever seen. This is even more amazing than the fake sky that Blue Planet San created on the 6th floor. Momonga thought in awe. Momonga reached into his item box and took out a necklace with a wing-shaped crystal. He put it around his neck and said, "Fly!" before swiftly taking off. "Hey, wait up!" Naruto exclaimed as the little clouds began to shine a little brighter, causing Naruto to fly faster in response. Not wanting to be left behind, Demiurge revealed his wings and changed his face to a reptilian one before swiftly flying up and pursuing them. After removing his helmet, Momonga noticed the dazzling full moon and the stars that shone around it as he looked out over the world. He continued to climb higher and higher until he eventually broke beyond the clouds. "Blue Planet San, I wish you could see this. This world is stunning." Momonga pondered, "Man, it kinda makes feel a little sad that we don't have our friends here to see this. Touch Me would have loved to experience saving others here, while Nishikienrai would have loved to explore new places while showing off his fighting style," Naruto said with a sorrowful face as he gazed upon. Momonga remarked, looking around him, "This world, this sky, it's almost like a box of jewels glittering." After catching up with them, Demiurge remarked, "I think this world shines so that you and Lord Naruto can adorn yourselves with its riches." That may be so. Maybe we were brought to this world for that very reason, but it's not something I should hoard all to myself. Nazarick and everyone in Ainzelgown should be adorned with this world's riches, Momonga remarked after a moment's reflection. Dude, that was so corny, deadpanned Naruto, observing that the undead was once again behaving like an overlord and delivering dramatic spiel. However, he will concede that it did sound really pleasant, and it also increased his appreciation for Momonga as a close friend. If you wish it to be so, then we shall use all the forces of Nazarick to obtain it for you, Demiurge said with a profound bow. While he is not a very evil person, Naruto murmured, that does sound pretty exciting, taking all of it for ourselves after spending a considerable amount of time with a group of gamers who enjoyed playing the villains. Then again, taking over the world might be interesting, Momonga said, laughing as she gazed at the moon. HMHM, even if we don't know what's out there? The two supreme beings were so absorbed in their thoughts that they were unable to see Demiurge's amazed expression at his master's goals, not understanding that they were merely kidding. Still, you think we're the only ones that came here? Naruto pondered. Maybe the others came here too. I do hope so. While I am extremely glad you are here with me, but knowing that Momonga would have desired for the entire guild to reunite, Naruto waved him off mischievously. Yeah, I know, he said. You know, if they are out here in this world, no matter how slim the chances, we could reach out to them by spreading the name of Ainzelgown, right? That might actually work. Momonga thought to himself, it might take a long and it might also prove to be fruitless in the end, but if there is possibility that they were also transported here just like us, we definitely have to find them. Ha! Count me in. We'll have to come up with some kind of plan, but for now, this is a start, Naruto said, nodding enthusiastically at the thought. Then they heard rumbling coming from below, and when they looked down, they saw four surges of earth racing towards Nazarick's walls. Earth surge, he wrote, looks like Mare isn't wasting any time, he said. Perhaps we should check up on him, Momonga said. Demiurge, what kind of reward should I give him? I think he would be happy just from being able to talk with you again, the devil said. Naruto yawned and his companion nodded. If it's okay with you two, I'm going to bed. I'm feeling pretty exhausted from the past few days. Don't stay up too late, he murmured, waving them away.